I see we have a Carlton and Merrily on. It's good. All right, so we'll start with a review and approval of the minutes from our last meeting on January 6th. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review the minutes. I know I did. I did not find any issues, any corrections. So I'd accept a motion to approve the minutes.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the minutes from the January 6th meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I, Darren Boston, second the motion.
All right, thank you, Darren. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, Josh, we'll take a roll call.
Ed,
Yes?
Cleone,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there he is, real time. All right.
Internet's slow up here, so I try not to use the camera.
All right, thank you, folks. All right, next item is public comment. Just a review for those who want to speak tonight. We have two opportunities, public comment. You will be muted and raise your hand if you'd like to speak. We'll call on you to speak. You'll have 3 minutes to say whatever you need to say. There'll be really no dialogue with the committee. And then there'll be another opportunity towards the end of the meeting. I do want to remind folks that during the committee's discussion, there'll be no input from the citizens during that time. So appreciate your help on that. So I'll open it up for public comment if there's anyone that would like to speak. Carlton?
Yeah, I see that you've got the recall petition on there. That's a really critical, as you know, from the previous, those of you who've been around town for a while, that's a really critical element to include. And the previous Charter Review Committee had worked hard to use what was then used in the past to recall people. We made some edits to that one, but I don't know how well it went with the Rules Committee. But I really encourage that to be seriously looked at and actually recommended forward. Thank you.
I like the beard. It's getting long.
Well, it's been shaved once in the last 9 months. Or shortened, I should say shortened. Thank you.
I see. All right, thanks, Carlton. Anyone else? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is old business. And I think what we'll do is we'll pick up where we left off last meeting. I do have Scott's mock-up here, so I'm going to bring that, share my screen. Now I have two Word docs open at the same time. Hopefully I'm not going to have an issue like I had before. Can you all see that?
Yes, I can see something.
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of yellow.
Yeah, so the yellow part that you see at the top of the screen is where we left off last meeting. That's the library trustee verbiage that we voted on and approved. So we're starting tonight with section 3-3, which is the recall provision. The verbiage that we have in here right now is the verbiage that actually came out of the, I believe, the Rules and Procedure Committee. So I think right now Scott is suggesting that we support that verbiage. He does have a couple of comments here. The first one that you can see under B is that there's a fixed number of signatures required to initiate a recall. 100 if from within a district, registered voters, if the person that's being recalled is from within a district. And then if it's somebody that's at large, the same number is 100 registered voters to start the process. Scott's comment over here says, since the number of voters varies from district to district, a fixed number like this creates a disproportionate barrier to commence the recall process. He says a percentage of the voters may be a better option. The at-large counselor position is elected by many more voters than the district counselor. So I looked at this earlier myself, and thought about whether a percentage might be a better option since he suggested it. And I had got some information from Merrill Lee today on the total number of voters in the town, which would apply to an at-large recall versus the largest precinct that we have in town. So the total number of voters is roughly 18,500 in that range, approximately 18.5. So right now, 100 voters to start a petition, a recall petition of an at-large person, percentage-wise, that would be 0.5%. Okay, 100 out of 18,500, roughly 0.5%. So the largest precinct in town right now is precinct 3, which is roughly 3654. So if you took 0.5%, if you wanted to apply the percentage suggestion, 0.5% would only be 18 votes, which in my mind is not enough to start a recall petition. So we either have to raise the percentage to some number that we feel is meaningful, or we leave it the way it is right now at 100, or some variation. So I wanted to start a discussion on that to see what your thoughts might be.
So Ed, I'm gonna turn my camera on. If I go offline, it's because my internet is terrible. So my thought would be the only problem with the percentage is it might be on a year-to-year basis difficult to figure out how many makes that percentage. And I get Scott's point about the at-large has more voters. So maybe the at-large is one concrete number and the district is another concrete number. That way we don't on a year-to-year basis have to figure out, you know, what threshold we have to meet. It's consistent from now until the end of this charter's life.
Right. And then we'd have to put something in there in terms of whose job is it to figure that out too.
Right.
So,
So
that's
I would
good,
say like 100 for district and 250 for at large. Those numbers I made them up. I have no basis for why I picked them.
okay. But it certainly is heading in the right direction in terms of the disproportionate number.
Right.
Let me just do the math real quick. So 100 out of, say, precinct 3 would be 2.7%, almost 3%. And 250 out of 18,500 would be 1.3%.
I mean, you can make it 500, but
Maybe make it 500.
Yeah.
See what that number is. That's the same percent, 2.7. So if we went with 100 for the district and 500 for at large, that basically is a 2.7%, roughly 3% requirement. Any, how do you feel, Cleone or Darren, about this?
I like the idea of percentage, but we may need to use a little bit of a larger number, let's say maybe 5% for in areas where there's not a large voter count.
Well, the thing is, we can't apply a different percentage for different districts. I don't think that's going to really complicate things.
Yeah, that's what I would say. 5% might be. Maybe, I don't know if that's too high of a number, but
It might be. So 5%, 18,000 times 5%, that would be 925 signatures you'd have to get it for an at-large position. That's, I think, a little too high. I mean, 500 sounds a little high to me too, but I think it's within reason to suggest that a 3%, or roughly, almost a 3% requirement would be okay.
And this is for a recall, like if we want to recall someone?
Correct. If we want to recall an elected official.
On one hand, I also wanted to confirm, is recall in our definition? I know that's a separate thing, but
I don't know, we can look it up. I'm just make a note to check on that.
I guess I'm having a difficult time having an opinion on this because I don't know what best practices are in town. I should have researched before coming to this meeting. Was hoping to get some guidance on that. Anybody familiar with how this is handled elsewhere?
In other towns,
Yeah.
not off the top of my head, no.
No. I do think though, I mean, getting 100 signatures in a district, which is the way it's worded right now, sounds very reasonable to me. So 100 out of a total of, say, almost, say roughly rounded up to 4,000 people, because with the census coming out, the census numbers coming out, that precinct may go up to, say, 4,000 people. So getting 100 signatures out of 4,000 is reasonable. And I think 500 out of 18,000 is also reasonable. So what I'm trying to do here is consider Scott's comment, which I do think is valid, and maybe just change the number for the at-large requirement to 500 instead of 100. So
that sounds real.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds, I just want like maybe a correlation to how many signatures get you elected. There's a huge discrepancy between the number of signatures to get you out versus the number of signatures to get you on the ballot, right? So it's 150 universally to get you on the ballot. And then we're using a different methodology to kind of get you off of the ballot. And then when you have very small areas, if we stick with,
So
they lose their voice and their power. Mm-hmm.
I am doing a quick search of other town charters that we've looked at, and percentage seems to be a theme so far.
Okay. Well, I'm willing to go with what we just discussed, but if no one's willing to make a motion on it, and we're not willing to, proceed any further with this, then we're going to have to come back to it, unfortunately.
So,
So,
like,
do we
Go
want to
ahead,
go with 3%? Is that what we're leaning towards, 3%?
We can, if you want, yes, 3% would basically give us the numbers that we were just talking about. But as Tom said, the issue with 3% is every year, the number's got to, anytime there's a recall, that number's got to be calculated.
so the more I Google, I'm also finding like the town of Plymouth is 500 for their at-large. So it goes to there's both.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a mixture out there, and if we had all the data in front of us, I'm not sure it would sway our decision or not. The bottom line is we need to have some sort of a stake in the ground that sounds reasonable. So if we go with the hard and fast numbers of 100 for districts and 500 for at-large, then that's in the charter and it never changes. If we go with a percentage, then every time it has to happen, the number has to be calculated. And then we have to define who's going to be responsible for calculating that. Is it the town clerk? Sorry, go ahead, Cleone.
Yeah, I mean, based on what's being said, I am more in favor of the percentages because there must. I suspect that there is other reasons to determine the number of people in the town already. I don't suspect that will be a hard thing to do. Thinking about how often does a recall happen in the first place. As far as selecting a percentage right now, I would caution us to do that because I'm sure there's some statistical analysis that would be a better indicator around what percentage is reasonable versus us just choosing a percent at this time.
Okay.
Like a representative sample based on statistics.
The one thing with that, Cleone, in basic statistics, you would have to get a lot more of the registered voters, even if they didn't participate in electing that person in the first place. And it might not be an obtainable thing. It depends on what your p-value is. And I don't want to nerd out too much here because, you know, it'll waste time. But I mean, if you're going for statistical significant sample sizes, I think you're gonna need more than would be easily obtainable, or not moderately obtainable. I don't want to say easily.
I mean, I don't, again, I want to get everybody's input on this, but I also don't want to overthink it. I don't want to create, I don't think it's going to be good to create a process that is going to be more difficult than it needs to be. I see Scott. I just allowed Scott into the meeting, but I don't see him showing up. Josh, do you see him?
I'm here.
Oh, you are? Okay. I just don't see your face. Maybe it's because, oh, there you are, Scott. So we're just discussing your comment on section 3-3B on changing the number or addressing the number of voters required to initiate a recall.
Yes, I see that. I don't want to interrupt the conversation that's going on. It seems like it's a good debate.
Yep. Okay. So we're at a point right now where we're talking about, should it be a percentage or should it just be a hard and fast number? If we go with 100 for the district and 500 for the at large, that turns out to be just about a 3% number for both.
So what if you use both? Let's say you use the number, let's say 100 or 3%, whichever was larger. So if you don't have a large turnout, if not too many people vote, then you would go with the percentage. If you have a good turnout, then you'd go with the hard number, or whichever one was larger.
But do you mean like the percentage of registered voters or the percent of the people that voted for the person to get in the office in the first place?
Well, I think it should be the percentage of people who vote. If you have registered voters and only half the people vote or 30% of the people vote, you can't rely on having a large number. You might not have the numbers that you need.
Right.
Remember that the purpose here is to initiate the process. So we don't want a number that's too small because we don't want a handful of people starting a recall provision. But at the same time, we don't want to create a situation where, we need more than is necessary to start the process. Once the process starts, then it eventually gets, if it goes through the whole process, it gets to before the citizens for a town vote. So that's the end result. This is just what it was required to initiate it. I see Steve has joined as well. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Ed.
So I would think, with that said, with what you said, I would want to go with the hard numbers then, so that at least you have enough enough people voting to justify the recall.
Right. I would tend to agree with you on that, Darren. I think it's simpler. It's simpler, and it puts a stake in the ground that, says, there's enough people that are serious about this that the process should begin.
So would we like to change section 3-3, paragraph B, leave the first 100 and then, or in the case of an at-large official, 500 or more registered voters.
Right. Let me see
Okay.
if I can. Scott, do you mind me doing this?
Not at all.
Okay, so the only thing I've changed is the 1 to 5.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the change that Ed just made to 3-3B.
And Darren Boston, second the motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
Janet, I came in late, so I apologize. Can you explain to me what the advantage or the purpose of changing it from 100 to 500?
To make it more representative of the entire town, since it's 18,000 voters instead of just one district's representation.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, welcome, Janet.
So,
Okay, so we have a seconded, we have a motion ready for approval. Is there any further discussion?
so just to be clear, I'm motioning that section 3-3B be changed to what shows on the screen now. So it also includes the town clerk, and board of registrars.
Right. So this is
Let me
Scott's, this is Scott's mock-up. The only thing we changed is 1 to 5 here in yellow. Okay, if there's no
Yeah,
further.
500 seems really high. I just wanted to say that. I don't know if that's discussion. 500 seems very high.
So, and I'll add, Cleone, the reason that I would advocate for 500 is a quick Google and review of other town charters of similar sized municipalities. Massachusetts also pick 500. And it's about 3%, which is consistent with the 3% it is for an individual district. Not to, dissuade, but that's where
Yeah, I think-
that's where those come from.
I'm not sure if I want to bring this up or not, but I'll say it. I mean, some people will say then that it's much harder to recall an at-large counselor than it would be to recall a district counselor. That's one thing that people would say, but, you also have 18,000. Well, you don't, yeah, you have 18,500 people voting for you.
Right. So you have, it's harder to get
it's
you need
easy.
more, but you also have more opportunity, and it's the same
Right.
3% or just under.
Yep.
Well, I think it's also important to point out that the last time we elected an at-large council member, Dennis Gallagher won, and it was with 438 votes that he won. Total number of votes.
You're on mute, Scott.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
now.
You went on mute.
Sorry. I believe the number was 512 was the total votes cast for the entire race of at-large. So,
Wow.
I mean, having a 500, as Cleone said, that might be a bit too high, just looking at the number of votes cast. But also, my other thought is not voting is also an expression of your opinion.
Right.
And Scott, I agree 500 is high, but if you're going to undo a democratic process, it should take some legwork, I think. I don't know why I'm fighting so hard for 500. I have no vested stake in 500 versus 480 or 300, but
250.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah, just knowing the way, having gone out and had to go and get 100 signatures from people just in my district. I mean, that was just to get nominated. That was challenging. That was an awful lot of work. So I think 100 is a solid number for a district counselor. If I needed to get 100 signatures, I could do that in, a couple hours at the transfer station. So Yeah, I think we're in the right ballpark.
Yeah, and at least it's the same percentage wise, you know. It's actually 2.7%. Yes, Cleone.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of address Tom's point that, you know, you do want to have skin in the game if you want to, you know, take someone out of their position. But, you know, as a citizen, you know, a lot of our systems around having true full participation of the resident and having them well informed isn't where it should be. And so it is difficult, especially in this town, until certain things are kind of tweaked as far as notification, websites, and even understanding now how people communicate. That's not a real true judge of, you know, the desires of the community just based on the votes, because that system needs a lot of improvement. And so I really feel that we should bring that threshold down, 150, 200, you know, because of the ratio between the district at large. But to Scott's point, you know, just even looking at the number of people that vote, you know, to have the threshold higher than the participation rate based on, you know, what's happened in the past, we possibly can get stuck with someone who isn't very effective because of, you know, just lack of awareness of the residents.
But they're still on a fixed term, though. It's not like we're picking a king forever.
Then why would we need this, right? This provision is in place even despite having that fixed term, and we just wanting it to be a useful tool.
Right. So it would take some egregious mishandling of a position to warrant citizens wanting a recall, and we're creating a barrier, but a barrier that has a door if needed. It's not like you're saying they need to, you know, get the entire town on board, and you don't want it to be too low that it can be, I don't want to use the term willy-nilly used, but I'm going to use it because it's a fun term, used willy-nilly at the whim of a couple people that don't like somebody.
So if there's a general feeling that maybe 500 is a little too high, what if we brought it down to 300?
That's
Or
what I was going to suggest. 300, meet in the middle.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table that's been seconded.
So
if there's a feeling, if there's consensus that we feel maybe we should bring the number down, then we need to retract the motions and a new motion would have to come up.
So Darren, you want to retract your second, and I'll retract my motion?
Yeah, Darren Boston, retract my second.
And I, Thomas Golden, retract my motion.
Okay, so the motion is gone. So is there a new motion to make this number, say 300? Is that what we think is reasonable?
I was going to say 400.
Oh, jeez.
And
I know. But my thought process is, you know, similar to what has been said there, we need to balance the ability to actually have the recall with making it difficult enough that it's not used all the time and abused. Because to Tom's point, the ultimate recall provision is the next election.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can sit here all night and debate what the number is. So let's someone make a motion on a number and see where it goes.
For the love of God, people.
The number is 400.
Is there a second?
I, Thomas Golden, second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, then Josh, roll call, please.
Ed,
Yes.
Cleone,
No.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve,
oh,
Janet,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay. Just a reminder, we will be voting on all these things a second time at the end. So if things change, they'll change. But Scott, I think this was a good catch of yours. So thanks for bringing that up. All right, the next item here was you made a comment about must all the signature pages contain the original or the official seal and signature, or may photocopies be used? Is that something we need to address in the charter, or is that just something that, you know, the town clerk would make a determination on his or her own?
Well, the reason I put that in there is last time we did have a recall petition. If I remember correctly, this was an issue where the proponents who were seeking the recall had to have the official page. And the question was whether or not the photocopy, because they wanted to be able to photocopy them and hand them out and have other people go out and collect signatures and do that sort of, helping out with the work. But they had a finite number of these pages that they could use. And I believe we're going back, almost 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
I believe the clerk's response then was that the official form had the official stated reason for the recall on it. And that's why it had to be the original one with the seal. So I just wanted to have that discussion and see what people's thoughts were.
So
Anybody
I'm
have
not
any thoughts on it?
sure, personally, I'm not sure that this needs to be addressed by us, to be honest with you. I mean, it says the blank form shall be issued by the town clerk with said clerk's signature and official seal attached thereto. So you're getting into something that's really not addressed here. And are you saying, should we address it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that up because operationally it was an issue during the actual recall process.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to let it go without, just pointing out that this was an issue. Do we
Right.
want to address it?
Well, so if it was
seems
an
pretty
issue,
clean by itself.
if it was an issue, Scott, what kind of verbiage would you put in here to address it? What would you say or add or change here to clarify it?
Well, the way I read it, it does not allow for any sort of photocopies. And I actually prefer it that way
Mm-hmm.
because it makes certain that, that the last sentence there, the grounds of the recall, it's important that the people that are signing the recall, petition or affidavit, whatever it is, have the opportunity to read the stated reason, the grounds for the recall.
Right.
And and they're actually able to see the entire document.
Yep, I would agree with you. So I'm okay with leaving it as is. I don't know if anyone else wants to make a motion to change it at this point.
What I thought what Scott said was the opposite. I thought he said you.
I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is, but I wanted to bring this issue up.
Okay, yeah. I would
Because-
say leave it.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
my whole point here was having seen this process play out, I just wanted to inform the committee who may not have been as close to it as I was.
Okay.
Yeah. I know if
All
I'm
right.
signing something, I want it to be official.
Okay, so we'll move on then. Item C. Now, Scott, I was trying to figure out what you changed here, and it looks like you put the word found. The original verbiage said, if the petition shall be found and certified by the town clerk in the Board of Registers. You changed it to say, if the petition shall be certified by the town clerk and the Board of Registers and found to be sufficient. Is that what your intention was?
Actually, are we able to go back a little bit before that? I had a question about, it's about line 20. It mentions a 10%, and I wasn't clear if it was, is it 100 or 10%? I know we've since changed the above to 400 signature, but I just needed some clarification on that paragraph under 20 where it says the 10% in the brackets.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with what we talked about earlier.
Okay.
I don't think. Let me just look at this again. The recall petition shall be returned and filed within 21 days after certification of the affidavit and shall have been signed by no less than at least 10% of the registered voters of the district or the town, as the case may be, based on the last town election.
So that's something completely different from what we just talked about?
Yes. It's a two-step process. You have the affidavit, which is a group of people saying, we want to recall, we want to have a recall. And you have to get enough people that sign that affidavit that say, we believe there are grounds for a recall. And then the town clerk will issue the petition. And then if you get enough signatures on the petition, then you actually have the recall election.
So the petition requires a new threshold,
Yes.
an additional. Thank you.
Okay.
And
All
that
right,
is,
so-
that is the process from the original town bylaw recall provision going back to, I think, the 70s.
Okay, thank you for that. So if we get back to item C here, was I correct, Scott, in identifying what you actually changed here? And then I think this was all one giant paragraph and then you broke it out. You separated this top part in yellow from the rest of it?
Yes. Yeah, it was an incredibly cumbersome paragraph to read and understand.
Right.
So I broke it into a couple of paragraphs so that you could see that the steps were distinct from each other.
Right. No, I think it adds clarity. It was a good thing to do. But again, the other thing that I found was you moved the word found from up in the beginning here to after, which is fine. It reads better, I think, this way.
Yeah, and then I was just trying to add some clarity to this paragraph because I think I had to read it about 5 or 6 times to figure out what it was trying to say.
Yep. Okay, so is there a motion to accept Scott's change here to item C? This is 3.3C.
I, Scott Pitta, move to adopt the language in 3.3C.
Okay, is there a second?
I, Thomas Golden, second.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, Josh, we'll take a roll call on 3-3C.
Ed,
Yes?
Cleone,
Yeah.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes,
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you. All right, as we move down, I don't believe, Scott, you had any other changes within 3-3. So that cares for the recall provision. The next item was section 3-4, which was originally the section that contained the town clerk, which had been moved out, I think because of the recommendation to make it appointed, since the 3-3 was talking about elected officials. So, Scott, you want to verbalize what you had done here?
Just need to get caught up here. It's been a couple weeks since I did this.
So it looks like what you did was you utilized, I guess, a recommendation that came from outside the committee.
Yes, yes. So this is what I put in bold was the language from the city of Brockton that came to us from, I believe it was one of the town council members sent an email out, and it was sort of a compromise between the elected and appointed town clerk discussion, essentially having the town council elect the town clerk. And I thought that was an interesting point that is worthy of discussion.
Okay. Anyone want to chime in?
I don't know. I'm for keeping it elected, so that compromise is not acceptable to me. I'm just putting
Okay.
it there.
You want to elaborate
I was-
at all, Janet?
We're not Brockton, we're not, by having the town council do it, it's still not an elected position. It's still an appointed, you can name it whatever you want, but that's still not an elected position by the townspeople. And we had a survey, our own survey showed that people that did respond overwhelmingly said they wanted to keep it as an elected position. We had other surveys, other things that showed that they want to keep it as elected. So I'm not sure why we would even pursue it if our own survey pointed us in that direction. So.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Anyone else?
I came into this process not knowing where to stand on this. And after seeing the surveys, to Janet's point, it was overwhelmingly wanting to keep it appointed. I shared my one concern about that, having that appointment, in that if there's an HR, sexual harassment or some kind of misdeed, that this position would not necessarily be under the guidance where they can be disciplined through the HR, and understanding that it is the citizen that will keep this position in check when we don't have someone like a Mary Lee in place. I still have concerns about, the level of engagement of our community to kind of make sure that this position stays true, and we can, exert our power if someone isn't fully fulfilling that. But that is something that, some external forces or the town government can work on, empowering the community to get more involved and pay attention to kind of keep this position in check. And so based on that and understanding how other governing bodies can be affected when you have multiple people that they have to report to. Example, a school district that has to report to, counselors, I can see how having multiple bosses can make this role less responsive and nimble, right? When you have the town council being the boss and they have to report to each of those things. So for that reason, I am now inclined to keep it as an elected position and just making sure that that role and other roles make access to their elected officials just more easy for people to participate and influence what's happening.
Can I add one thing? In my lifetime of being in Bridgewater for 42 years, I've never experienced a bad town clerk. My husband, who's been here 60 plus years, he's never experienced a bad town clerk. And one of the arguments that was that they're concerned that they're not going to get a town clerk that is has the credentials to be able to do the job. So far, I have not seen where that's been an issue with the elected position. So I don't think that's a major concern. That's all.
Yeah. So, Janet, I think would you say 42 years you've been here?
I've been here 42.
So, yeah, so you probably only been through 2 clerks, right? Because Ron Adams was here for like 30 something years. And well, Merrill Lee's been what, maybe 3 or 4?
Right. So we've had 2, but they've lasted and they've been good. My husband, I don't know who was before Ron Adams, but he doesn't recall ever, he might have been younger, but he's, over 60 years and never heard of any bad clerk. I've never heard of any bad clerks. So I don't think the argument of we're not going to get somebody qualified, so we should make it appointed, stands.
Well,
Okay.
I think part of the argument is that I've only lived through 2 town clerks as well. Ron Adams' signature is on my birth certificate. But this role is becoming, at least according to the Mass Municipal Association, this role is becoming more and more specialized, more and more technical. And even our current town clerk says without the expertise, the staff in the office, it wouldn't function well. And there's no specific training or anything, but it's something they have to learn on the job. With the job becoming more technical, do we want to have the ability to open up who's open for the position? I think we got very, very lucky with Mara Lee. The fact that she lived in town and she was eligible to run for the office and willing to run for the office. But we may be artificially limiting ourselves to only residents of the town. When it comes to having multiple bosses, we already have a situation with that with the town manager. And the way that works is the town manager's duties are laid out in the charter, and they also come from statutory and case law. Same thing with the town clerk. Once the council puts somebody in that position, whether it's appointed, elected, however, their duties and responsibilities are already defined within state law and case law. I guess big picture is when Marilee is finally ready to retire, we already know the staff of the office don't want the position. And are we really going to limit ourselves to only people who live in Bridgewater who want the job?
Well, I guess kind of related to that too, Scott, is if for any reason, whether it's Merrill Lee or any future clerk decides to resign for whatever reason, maybe they're moving out of town or there's whatever reason, but they resign, the unexpired term would have to be filled with another town elector. So again, it's not like you can, do a search like you would for a hired employee where you do a search and, you would have multiple opportunities to look at different people. You really have to go back to the town now and say, is somebody willing to run? And what if no one's willing? What if we ever run into a situation where no one wants the position? Then what happens? If it's appointed, then we can fill it. If it's elected and no one wants to run, then I'm not sure what the solution is.
What happens with town council? Sometimes you only get one, and you may not get anybody in a district. And what's our mechanism for that? It'd be kind of similar, but
Well, they do have the ability to appoint. And they'll take people that came in second and third in the prior election and go back to them and ask them if they want to be appointed to fill out the remainder of the term. But in the case of the clerk, unless there's multiple people running during the election, which I don't know that we have had multiple people, maybe we have. Did Marilee run unopposed? I don't remember. So I'm just saying that's just one thing to think about.
you could do
And,
a lot.
and I'd like to kind of,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Cleone.
yeah, and one thing that I think I've made clear since being on this committee, that it's really important that, to me, that we have as many mechanisms as possible for the residents' will to be heard, and there's a platform for that. And eliminating another position that can be representative of the people kind of goes against that. And so that's why I feel, am I correct that if we remove this position, the only elected positions that will remain is town council and trustees?
The library trustees, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's like we continue to chip away at the mechanisms that are in place for residents to have their voices heard. I know it's not perfect, right? I get that, and that there's not a lot of engagement, but is the solution, are we kind of fixing we're not fixing the root of the problem. We are instead fixing like the byproduct to avoid a possible situation that hasn't happened in over 30 years. So for that reason, I really feel very strongly about having as many mechanisms in place so that residents can contribute and shape how, the town is run. And if we eliminate another one and leave it, so then if all the things that we've discussed today, we would possibly eliminate this position and then make it difficult to recall because we've increased the number of votes that folks need, the threshold for folks to kind of, get rid of a counselor. This Constitution, when I first started, I said, what is the purpose of this, right? It should be a tool that the residents can use to, shape how things happen. And I want us to be very cautious about in the quest for ease and security that we're creating a tool that's making it more difficult for residents to actively participate. Outside of the fact that they don't fully exercise that right now, that's a whole education piece. And, but this is a tool, the Constitution, and I really want us to be cautious about how much stuff we take out and the barriers and the hoops that we put in for the ease and security of running the town when it should be in service to the people.
I agree with Cleone. She says it a lot more eloquently than me, but you take this away, people don't feel like they have a say in town anyways. And you're saying, well, people don't come to vote, which is true. But what's the point? If all you're going to be voting on is town council and library trustees, a lot of people don't necessarily, I hate to say not care, but, sometimes you don't know who they are. You're not going to vote for them. Sometimes if I don't know who somebody is, I don't even place a vote because I'm not going to vote for somebody, even if they're the only one there. I may not vote for them just because I don't know who they are. But it's overwhelming that the town wanted it to be kept voted on. So I still, in my personal, and everybody that I've personally have spoken to, they have all said the same. I have not met anybody that wants it elected. I only hear through the meetings. I don't know. I can't really say anything more. So
Okay, anyone else?
I mean, I haven't chimed in yet, but I mean, I would agree, like our survey of 100 and change, which apparently is not enough for recall, but enough to be representative of everybody else, is said that it should be a elected position. I would continue to say it should be an elected position for all the aforementioned reasons.
Okay,
Yeah, same
Steve?
here. I'm 100% on board with what Cleone said. I think she articulated it very well. And to Tom's point, those that have responded to the survey have spoken, and I have to agree with them.
Okay. Darren?
Well, isn't it, if they're elected by the town council, aren't they really elected by someone who knows them? I mean,
Are you saying in the verbiage that Scott provided, or are you saying the way it is today?
In the verbiage I'm looking at, it's like the town council elects the town clerk.
That's in Brockton, correct?
I am not on board with the town council electing the town clerk. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically an appointment, even though they say electing, it's an appointment. I'm sorry, Darren, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm kind of, yeah, I really can't. I mean, that position is, it's a lot of work, you need a lot of skills. I mean, it's not an easy position to fill. And I think there needs to be some flexibility on how that position's filled out, how either appointed or elected. I mean, it's important. It's like the town clerk is like kind of like probably more important than, probably the most important person or the most important position, mate. So
I agree, Darren.
So I think we all agree that the citizens spoke very clearly to us in the survey. And we've had plenty of people chime in during our meetings here and let us know their feelings as well. And I think, as some people have already said, we've been very fortunate to have Mary Lee doing this job in such an exceptional manner in the time that she's been in the job. She's truly, she's been accountable to the citizens, and we couldn't have asked for a better town clerk. But what keeps going through my mind is, what are the chances of having someone like her elected in the future? I mean, I guess it's certainly possible, but maybe is it really probable? Elections are basically situations where whoever runs, it's popularity. So if you have multiple people running, you can't set qualifications for an elected position. So it's whoever the people like the most, or whoever the people feel can do the job the best, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be qualified.
But
So-
when they, oh, sorry, when they put their thing forward, you would, yes, popularity, a name that they know can influence people, but you would expect that anybody who's running is going to say, these are my qualifications. That's their responsibility, is to tell people the qualifications. We can't treat, and I get it, there's all different sides of an election. People vote for all different reasons, the hair color. But we can't treat that people are stupid and not caring and that they're going to vote for somebody just because they like them. There's enough intelligent people that are going to look to see what their qualifications are based on the candidate presenting themselves. They're not going to just say, hey, I want to be town clerk. What experiences do I have? None, but I want to be town clerk. I think the people that would run would say, these are my qualifications. I've never been a town clerk before, but these are my qualifications. And you can learn on a job. A lot of positions I've learned on jobs of things that I've never done before. So you can learn. So
That's true. That's certainly a valid point, Janet. What keeps going through my mind is just trying to minimize any future risk for the town. And, for me, I'm really torn on this one because I can see the benefits of the appointment because it minimizes risks, I think, because you can hire a qualified person.
You hope is a qualified person.
Well, and if you don't, then you terminate them and you get another one. I mean, you don't have to go through a recall process like you would with an elected official. The other thing I want to just bring up is I don't believe that elected officials need to go through any sort of background checks. They're not subject to criminal background or credit checks. So in today's world, with everything that's going on with people, is that a risk that we could potentially elect somebody that we know nothing about from their background? Just wanted to point that out. If they're appointed, you can require background checks.
I mean, in theory, you would have an election where their opponent would identify that as a weakness.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you know that? I mean, yeah.
Local elections don't get much opposition research funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If I was running against somebody, I might Google them.
So something else I want to just throw out is over the past couple of weeks, I reached out to several individuals in the state who are very familiar with this issue because they're towns that have gone through very similar situation. Kelly McElrath, who's the president of the Mass Town Clerks Association. She's also the clerk for the town of Upton. Her position used to be an elected position, and the town decided to change it to appointed, which she was ultimately appointed to. So I asked her, I said, based on the fact that you have now held it as an elected official, but now you're holding it as an appointed official, what has changed, if anything? She feels that it's been a positive change. As a result of the appointment, she's become more integrated with the rest of the town administration, and she feels that she has more flexibility and support as being part of the overall management team in the town, as opposed to being an outsider. And before, as an elected official, she was sort of an island unto herself. Even though she had to work with different people in the department, she didn't report to anybody. She didn't get any performance reviews. She basically, was independent. So she felt that part of being now integrated within the team was a positive thing for her. The one thing she did say that appointed clerks have to do is they have to be strong enough to push back when necessary. So for example, if she felt like somebody was trying to influence her, do something that she didn't feel was right, she has to be strong enough to push back and stand her ground. And she said maybe not all clerks have that kind of personality to do that. I also asked her, as the president of the Mass Town Clerks Association, where the state stands in terms of appointed versus elected clerks. She told me right now it's roughly a 60-40 split, meaning 60% are elected and 40% are appointed in the state. But she did say that the trend has definitely been more towards appointment in recent years. And the reason for that is primarily for the reasons we've talked about: complexity of the job, more regulation, the need for more qualified people with different skill sets, so on and so forth. I also reached out to Brockton City Clerk Anthony Zioli. When Scott had put this verbiage in there, I figured I'd talk to somebody who's living in that. And he said that although his position is listed technically as being elected by the city council, he concedes that it's really an appointment, and it's been that way for over 30 years. Anthony thinks that appointed clerks give the town a leg up to ensure the position is filled with qualified people that have the necessary skill sets to perform the job. And like Kelly from Upton, he reiterated that appointed clerks have to hold their own and stand firm when any perceived influence is placed on their position. So that's just additional input that I was able to gather recently. And again, I have nothing but accolades for Marilee and the job that she is doing. But part of me really feels that we need to look beyond where we are today and ensure that the town is in the best possible structure to position for the future. And to me, appointed is a way to minimize future risks. But I also want to honor the voice of our citizens. So,
and I had a question about the comment that you made with both people that you spoke with. They talked about needing to be strong for the pushback. And I apologize, I haven't, I'm kind of getting acclimated to town politics at this point. Is that position unique to being appointed, and they did not have to exert themselves when they were elected? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So one of the concerns of that folks have with an appointed clerk is that because the position now reports into either the town manager, the city manager, or even in some cases the city or town council, that individuals could ask the clerk to do something that would not be necessarily, appropriate. For example, in getting involved in an election or doing something that would not be appropriate. And so they'd be using some influence to try and get the clerk to do something that was out of the ordinary. So the point was that, individuals that are in that position really at times have to step up and have to have a personality where they can say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not part of my job, or it's not something I should be doing, and, not do it, as opposed to, doing it because your superior told you to do it.
And so you're saying that as appointed, if their superior asked them something that they felt goes against the integrity of their role, that they would that the ideal candidate would have to have a strong personality to push back at their boss?
That's pretty
Possibly.
much it. Yes, they'd have to be able to stand firm in their convictions and in their what the job responsibilities are, and say, basically push back and say, no, I can't do that. And
in two different towns, two different individuals identified those two things. So
Yeah.
this is possibly okay. And so then my other question is, on one hand, I'm hearing that there are lots more regulations and technical part of the job. Does those guidelines also create these boundaries that appointed or elected clerk have to abide by, or is just, I'm trying to understand how that fits in. Yeah.
So a lot of what the town clerk's position as defined is set, as Scott said earlier, by state statute. And so, if an elected clerk has to get training or something, they can do that on their own, but if the town says you need training, they don't have to take it if they don't want to, because they're sort of independent, right? They manage their job as their own job. and they're accountable to no one except the citizens of the town. So, that was an issue, something that came up as well, that if they're in the town structure, they can get all the training that the town employees get. They get salary increases based on performance within the town structure. So it's different as an elected official. You don't fall under the same process and rules that the normal town employees do. I'm not sure I answered your question, Cleone, but I just want to make sure that enough information is out there to help everybody make a decision. Hopefully we can make a decision tonight. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I see that my screen sharing has been paused. I don't know why. I must have hit a key. I don't know how to unpause it. Let's see here.
We can still see your screen also.
You can see it? Because I
Yes.
can't see it. It tells me it's been paused. Resume share. There we go.
Oh, now it looks different. Oh, now it looks the same.
All right. Does anyone else want to chime in here, or does someone want to make a motion?
Ed, if I could, I mean, I am in favor of the idea of having the town council appoint the town clerk. I think that having the representative of the voters cast that vote, it at least preserves some of that representation of the voters in that process, rather than the traditional appointment process under the charter of having the town manager make the appointment. But just counting the majority of the committee, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I would say if we do leave this as an elected position, we need to make sure we have a process within the charter that addresses what if nobody runs, or what if the town clerk leaves office, what if the position is vacant? How is that filled?
Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. We have it as elected, but to address the concerns of if somebody resigns or what something happens to that town clerk before the next election, is there some way, and I don't have an idea yet, but of that protection, that it could be appointed temporarily at that point until the next election. I still don't feel having it elected by the town council, as in the language of Brockton, will satisfy the people, because you're just playing on words. It's still not their choice. Yes, it was their choice to vote for that counselor, but it's still not their choice. So you're still limiting them, and you're not listening to what the town wants. And this is a town charter. So, we, like Leonie said, that, we have to listen to what the people want. And if you have that in here, I don't think it would pass. And that's another situation down the road as to how it's going to be presented to the voters later on. But I still think it should be an elected position, despite all the other concerns. But if we can put something, what happens if, that language in there, then that could satisfy the concerns of others.
I guess I'm not of the mindset that I'm going to put the results of the survey are great, and I'm glad we had 100 people respond. But Tom kind of pointed out the irony of that's not enough for a recall, but somehow it's a representative sample of the voters of the town. It's the people who knew of the survey, who could respond, I never once saw the survey on any of the social media, and I'm on this committee. So I don't want to put too much faith in what came back in those response as this is what the 18,000 voters want. To that effect, I just see this language from the city of Brockton as a balancing point between a full appointment from the town manager, and then you have a town clerk that is really subordinate to a town manager versus having the town clerk, having the town council elect or appoint, whatever language you want to use. I just see it differently than you do, Janet, and that's, that's fine. That's part of this process. But I agree with Ed that I want to make sure we're prepared for the future. We got very, very lucky. Marilee stepped up when she did. I am concerned what will happen when she leaves. Who will we get? And what will they be like?
What happened between when Ron Adams passed away and before Marilee? Wasn't somebody appointed?
I think Jolie covered. I could be wrong, but I think she was made acting town manager, town clerk until the next election.
Was there any
Who's
issue?
Jolie and what role did she play? Who is Jolie and what role does she play?
Right now, she's the assistant clerk. She's been there for couple of decades, 20-something years.
And
Yeah.
she's
She
appointed
doesn't-
versus elected?
She's an employee. Yes, I mean, Marilee's the only elected official there. All the other folks are employees. And Jolie has said that she does not want the clerk position. She's happy doing what she's doing, and she's good at what she does. Okay, who else? Is everyone chimed in here?
When is the town clerk's position up again?
I could be wrong, but I think it's this April. I don't
It
know.
is.
It is this April? Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know if Marilee's going to run again. I don't know if she probably would if she's not going to retire, but hopefully she will. But this change, if we put the change in, will not be effective this April, right? Okay, are we still want to continue discussion here, folks, or are we sort of have we exhausted that for the time being?
And I can say just from the comments, I'm not going to put it forward as a motion. If somebody has changed their mind and wants to put it forward, great. But just from counting the votes, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I will say that we are going to need some sort of a provision for what to do when the position is vacant.
That's right. So if we vote tonight to keep it elected, I don't think we're prepared to add that verbiage tonight. We'll have to go back and reinsert that language next meeting. But we can at least make the decision tonight on how we want to leave the town clerk. So I am willing to entertain a motion by someone on the committee to help move this along.
I, Steve Purcell, motion to keep the town clerk as an elected position.
Okay, is there a second?
I, Thomas Golden, will second that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Going once?
So
I
if,
lost Zoom. So I don't know what the last wording was.
So we had a second on a motion, Janet. You hear that?
I hear that now. I lost Zoom completely. I just got back on.
Did you hear the motion?
No.
Okay. So this, Steve made a motion to keep the town clerk elected. And Darren seconded it, I believe, right?
No, Tom seconded
Tom
it.
seconded, I'm sorry.
Tom,
Okay. Tom seconded, and now we're open for discussion before a vote.
So if we were to vote to keep it an elected position, we're also going to add some verbiage. If there's a time when the position is vacant, that there's some verbiage for it to be appointed.
Correct. We'll have to care for a vacancy situation. And anything else we can think of that might happen. We have to care for those things. But those won't be done tonight, Darren.
Right,
We're
right,
prepared to
right.
do that.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Any other discussion? All right. If not, Josh, we'll need a roll call on this.
Ed,
No?
Cleone,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott.
No.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay. Thank you, folks. So the town clerk, the language in the current charter, the 2010 charter, will remain in place, which you don't see that in front of you. I can read it to you quickly, because both the former Charter Review Committee as well as the Rules and Procedure Committee had it appointed. So let me go back and just quickly review the language in here. Was section 3.4 as, well, maybe it's actually right, is it up here? Yeah, this is it right here. Sorry. So the town clerk shall be elected by and from the voters at large. Term of office is for 3 years, beginning on the second Monday following the election. And then the powers and duties. So as Darren mentioned, and others as well, we're going to need to come back and look at how to fill any vacancies that may occur. So that'll be an action item for next meeting. Okay, we all set with this now? Can we, that completes Article 3.
Yay.
And this was one of the easy articles. Only kidding. All right, I'm going to stop sharing because I don't have, that's all I have for Article 3. What I'd like to do now, next item on the agenda, let me get organized here. We've got a lot of paper here. Under new business. So Merrill Lee had mentioned to us, I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the meeting before that, that she suggested that we change the term town clerk in the charter to city clerk, because we essentially have a city form of government. And she said that there was some benefit to her, I believe, by having that change. So there's 90 occurrences of term town clerk in the charter right now. So we could change all those 90 occurrences to city clerk. Okay. At the same time, I started thinking, well, if we're going to change the clerk to a city clerk, why don't we just change all occurrences of town to city? So instead of it being the town of Bridgewater, we're now the city of Bridgewater. So legally, we can do that. We are under a city form of government. Cities and towns at the state level are treated equally in terms of regulations and things like that. I guess the only thing we have to consider is sort of, the disposition of the town and what people want to still be called the town, or do they want to be called the city, or do they even care? There would be some expense associated with changing signs and things like that, but that could be done over a period of time. It doesn't have to be done immediately. But I'm wondering, we've been 10 years now or more under this charter, under this city form of government, but everything is still called town. You know, maybe it's time to you know, come into the present and just recognize the fact that we are under a city form of government. And if we're going to have a city clerk, then we should have a city manager. We should have a city council. And maybe we should refer to ourselves as a city. So I'm going to just throw that out for discussion. It's something that we don't have to decide tonight, but I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts.
My thought is just because we supposedly have a government that is considered a city government, doesn't make us a city. You know, I think you're going to find a lot of people prefer town of Bridgewater. There may be some people who don't care, but there's a difference between being labeled as a city versus a town, despite what kind of government we have. And I think there would be a lot of things to consider to change it from town to city. I obviously would lean to keeping it as a town, live under the illusion if you want, but it's the notation of a city is so much different. Your impression of a city, you think of Brockton, you think of Boston, you think of other, you know what I'm trying to say, a big place. If we hadn't changed the government, we would still be called a town. I think it gives you more a friendly feeling, a more homey feeling. I don't know what else to say. It just there's a big difference between I'm from a city, I'm from a town. So, and people don't look at it, I'm from a city because my government is this way. They're not saying, they don't look at what their label of their town is based on the government. They're looking at it as a whole, and you have to look at the big picture, not just how we run the government. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Janet.
I think from my point of view, you know, honoring what Janet is saying, that the term town of Bridgewater creates this kind of homey feeling. But when I think about the technical difficulties that can bring up in, you know, kind of doing the work of the town and the administration, I would look to have those documents be more consistent, because I can see how if you're a town, there's going to be certain guidance, and then if you're a city, there's certain guidance, and there's going to be some conflicts there. So I'm, you know, call us the town of Bridgewater, but I'm looking to have more consistency in how we're referenced in our legal documents for the purpose of guidance and how things are administered. I think that would make it easier for those who have to abide and reference these documents.
Okay, thank you, Cleone. Anyone else have any feelings on it?
So I'm just looking at the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website here about what the difference is. And there are cities that are smaller than us, like the city of North Adams, population wise, the city of Chelsea, geographically, like the square miles.
Actually, Tom, there's several towns that are in the same boat as us. They've had charters, city charters for several decades, and they've recently changed from towns to cities just to come up to speed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so what I was getting at is that, like, I don't think that, like, I understand Janet's homely point, but I would be on the favor of changing it to the city, just based on the form of government, based on some other municipalities in the area that have made that switch as well. We are a big municipality now. We are, in my opinion, at city level, especially with the form of government we have, which is something I do look at.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree with Tom. I just did a quick Google search of the population of Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and it comes up as 27,000. And I don't know if that's with all the college students here or what, but either way, I think that that's a big enough population where we should be called a city, you know, and also throw on top of the form of government that we have. So I'm in favor of changing it to city.
Okay.
Changing it to city, would that affect how the town, I get it for, you're talking about how the inside stuff is run, but overall, how does that affect how the town is, you know, as far as the running of, I don't know how to say it, living in the town? How does it change
No.
how things could be in the town, just to change it from city to town, from town to city? You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying it right, but
Yeah, no, it does.
affect
There's nothing that changes other than perception, Janet. Cities and towns are viewed equally at the state level in terms of funding and in terms of regulation and other things. There's really no difference legally between a city and a town. It's really up to local sentiment and perception. So if people view cities as negatively because of maybe crime or whatever the reason, then people are going to say, oh, I don't want to be called a city, because that denotes a certain perception. But there are great cities that don't have crime as well. I mean, it's just, I think what Cleone was saying is, you know, technically we are a city, but we don't call ourselves that. We don't call our positions that. And maybe for consistency standpoint, it makes sense now to where we are making changes to the charter to bring that level of consistency up to where it needs to be.
Now, I believe Merrily mentioned that there may be some benefit to changing it, but there's also going to be a cost. So we may want to also consider the costs and benefits of becoming a city.
Yeah, so the only cost I'm aware of, again, would be sign changes. You know, and fire trucks, police cars, things, you know, city vehicles, letterhead. So that, yeah, and again, there will be definitely a cost associated with that, but that can happen over time. It doesn't have to be immediate. It can be spread over months, years if needed. So it's just right now a question of, we have the charter opened up, and if we don't change it now, then it'll be changed probably sometime in the future. Do we want to take that opportunity now to do it?
That's something to have to really think about and get a consensus.
Yep.
My initial reaction is no. I'm with Janet on this one.
Okay. I think has everyone spoken up on it on the committee? I think so. Again, we don't have to make a decision tonight. We can come back to it. You know, Merrily had requested that we look at that for the city clerk, and I just expanded it to include other things as well. So why don't we, Scott, are we allowed to table discussion for the future and not act on it tonight?
There's no vote or anything. There's no motion on the table. We can bring this up as a discussion piece further down the line.
Okay. All right. So maybe talk with your friends, socialize a little bit the concept of doing this, and see what people think. And we can certainly use that feedback to help guide our decision making. Okay. Another thing I just want to bring up quickly, I know it's not specifically on the agenda, but Scott had sent out an email yesterday, I believe, or the day before, which I don't recall seeing any responses to. Scott, I don't know if you did get any responses, but it has to do with producing future mock-ups that we can use to help guide us through the charter. Did you get any responses, Scott?
I did not get any responses, and that's fine, but I am starting a new job on Monday, and
congratulations.
Thank you. It's it'll be nice doing a lot of pro bono work. So But the long and the short of it is, I'm looking for some help with the mock-ups. Someone who can take a couple of pieces of each section, each article. We can split them up however, and just go through and, similar to what I've been doing all along, but, many hands make light work. So the more
Yep.
people we can get involved with this, I think the better off we'll all be. And we'll also get very different opinions on stuff, which will
Yep.
help our discussions as we go forward.
Okay. I think that's a good suggestion. The
Rather
next,
than taking too much time, Ed, I'd just say, if anyone is interested, please send me an email. Or email Ed. I think emailing Ed might be the best way to go. And Ed, if you want to, just split up the sections how you see fit.
okay, well, I was going to suggest that, I'd be willing to kind of spearhead the next article, Article 4. And maybe if I could get one or two of the committee members to help me with that. And then at our next meeting in 2 weeks, we can present sort of one view from the 2 or 3 of us that work on it. Scott, I mean, you've done an outstanding job in the last couple of articles. Do you want to just take a break now since you're starting a new job on Article 4?
Yeah, I think I'll take you up on that offer.
Okay, all right. So I'll reach out to the committee unless somebody wants to volunteer now to help me with Article 4.
I'll be honest with you. I have my full-time job during the day, and this is tax season, so I do taxes at night. So right now my schedule is and on the weekends I also do taxes. So right now during tax season, I wouldn't be really much help, to be honest with you.
Okay, I appreciate that, Darren.
Ed, I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. All right, then we'll move on to the next item here, which is public comment.
Can I jump in one last thing before we do that?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that we're very clear on this, that open meeting law, if you take a section of an article, we just can't discuss it amongst each other outside of these meetings.
Right.
Take your section of that article, make your comments, send the email, and no deliberations outside of the meetings.
Yep. Thank you, Scott. Okay. Public comment. Carlton.
Thank you, Scott. Oh, thank you for the deliberations tonight. Very fascinating and hard work. Also, thank you, Scott, for reminding the committee that you cannot communicate amongst yourselves. The idea that Scott put forward could be, if anybody had responded to that, it could be considered a violation of the open meeting law. So please continue to respect the open meeting law. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Action items for the next meeting. So we talked about the need to look at a town clerk vacancy. I will take it upon myself to draft something that I will bring forward to the next meeting. If everybody's okay with that, unless somebody wants to do it. Okay. Any other action items? Can anybody think of anything else that we need to consider for our next meeting other than diving right into Article 4?
You mentioned needing to have more frequent meetings or longer meetings. Is that something we should discuss tonight?
We can. I guess, I'm getting concerned that we're moving much slower than I originally had thought. I mean, we're obviously doing a quality job here, so we want to continue to do that. But based on the schedule that we had created back in November, I'm beginning to be a little concerned about whether we're going to complete in time. So the options are, we either meet more frequently or we extend our meeting times, or we ask for an extension when the time to do that happens. I don't think we're ready to do that right now, but
Ed, do we have a hard deadline with the town?
Well, I mean, we're given a year, so I can go back and look at the date when we were commissioned. It was in June, I believe. So
Okay,
we were given a year, so we would have to ask for an extension beyond that if we felt we needed that. Now, I can't specifically say to you right now that if we continue on the current track, here's where we're going to be come June. Because every meeting is different, and part of it depends on how many citizens we have. I mean, if we have a lot of citizens that want to speak, obviously that we value the input, and that takes extra time from us, so it pushes things out a little bit. So it's hard to actually know where we'll be, but I want to be able to at least anticipate some delays right now, and if we can deal with those sooner rather than later, I think we'd be better off. So any opinions from the team?
I would prefer to extend the meeting that we have rather than add additional meetings.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So extend it by what, Scott?
Whatever we need.
Okay. And Tom, you agree? Janet, Steve, and Cleone, any input from, or Darren, any input from you guys?
Extending the days that we have would be ideal for me. Adding more days to do it would be something that I don't know, I'm kind of opposed to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you mean
I'm-
extended the time, right?
Yeah, so
Right.
we would go beyond 8 o'clock, whether it be a half hour or an hour. So potentially, we could go till 9 o'clock, 6 to 9, which is a long meeting, but I mean, the time does go by fast.
I won't be able to stay beyond 8. I have a hard stop at 7:55.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
And,
Darren?
So I'm committed to the first and third Wednesday. And like I said, I do taxes at night, so those days I told them I'm not available to do taxes. But those days, I'm flexible as far as work, staying a little later if
Okay.
needed.
Okay.
So I would say, I would just say, clearly, I know you have a hard stop at 8, but when we started this process, we went till 9. Like, if we did 6 to 9, I think everybody except Cleone is here. So if we scheduled meetings to anything Cleone has specific things she wants to input in on the front half of the meeting, that might allow us to make sure that she gets to say whatever she wants, not to speak for you, Cleone, and then stuff that she is less committed to, we could debate outside of that, grammatical stuff, what have you, between 8 and 9.
Full support. That's a great idea.
Good idea, Tom. Okay. Okay, great. So I guess on an as-needed basis, we'll extend the meetings, and I should know roughly when I put the agendas out, what meetings we're going to need to run over. So rather than, say right now, we're going to change the meeting time from 6 to 9, we'll just kind of do it as needed, all right?
Ed, if I can just interrupt for just a second.
Sure.
I do have a couple committees that sometimes go over this time frame that they have in place. And all they do is motion to extend the meeting past the scheduled time.
During the meeting, they do that.
During the meeting, yep.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
That's a good.
And
I
Josh,
like
you're
that.
available 6 to 9, right?
Yeah, I'll be here.
We'll send you pizza.
He's on the clock, so he's happy.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right, Cleone, thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate it. Okay, that's it. Our next meeting is Wednesday, February 3rd, 2 weeks from tonight at 6 o'clock. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I,
I,
Thomas
Scott
Golden,
Pitta,
motion to
move to
adjourn the
adjourn.
meeting.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Second.
I, Scott Pitta, second.
Thank you, Scott. Any discussion? All right, roll call.
Ed,
Yes.
Leonie,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all. Take care.
Have a
Good
Good night. Stay safe.